Thank you for joining us. Welcome everybody who has joined us. We are very glad that you are taking time to join us for this week's Trade Talk. Karibu sana. My name is Kezi Mukiri from Ignite Trade Africa. I would like to welcome you all. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us where you're joining us from. Tell us what service or what product you are engaged in and what form of trade or service delivery that you are engaged in. We would like to get to know you a little bit more and to interact with each one of you who is joining us. Once again, welcome. I see that our two speakers are already here with us. Allow me to just very quickly introduce Ignite Trade Africa to you. These trade talks are normally very brief, very targeted, very focused, and we only spend about 55 to 60 minutes in this conversation. It is an interactive session, and we welcome you to post your questions, your recommendations, your feedback, and even your perspectives in the chat box, even as you introduce yourself. Ignite Trade Africa is a business development firm. We are specifically engaged in supporting businesses that have an export orientation. And we are based in Nairobi, Kenya, but we work with companies all across the world that are looking to do business within the continent of Africa. Just a few weeks ago, we began to host a series of trade talks in the month of May, every Thursday. And we have had very interesting conversations in the last 3 trade talks. We began with a conversation on intellectual property and its implication and impact for small businesses that are involved in international trade. That conversation was facilitated by the Kenya Industrial Properties Institute, KIPI. The following week, we had a conversation on sales channels, international sales channels, or what we would call go-to-market strategies for small firms that want to exploit opportunities in international trade. And just last week, we were having a conversation on global digitalization and looking at the opportunities in that space. How is digitalization changing the face of international trade? And today I'm very excited to host this conversation. We are talking about the future of global trade. What are the challenges? What are the changes? What are the opportunities? We'll be spending just a little bit of time exploring the trends in global trade and finding the opportunities that we could leverage in. So we welcome you to participate in today's conversation. We are joined by our speakers, Anne Wamboi Gaitha. Anne is an international trade and investment expert. She is the founder and CEO of the Regal Africa Group. Anne will introduce herself and what she does more extensively in just a moment. We are also joined by Joy Wanjiru Mashugu Zenz. She is the founder and CEO of the African Women in Europe, and also the CEO and founder of the African Women in Trade. So without much further ado, I would like to welcome both Anne and Joy to first of all introduce themselves in that particular order, and we will quickly delve into our conversation. Welcome, Anne. Welcome, Joy. It's such a joy, really, to be hosting you this afternoon, and I'm looking forward to a vibrant discussion, a vibrant conversation. Welcome, Anne. Would you kindly introduce yourself? Let us know what you do, your areas of expertise, and how those listening to us can interact with you and your business.
All right, thank you, Kezi, for giving me the opportunity. to join you today for this wonderful discussion or conversation about the future of global trade, and I'll say from the eyes of an African. And I'm honored to be on the same, conversation with Joy, because this is something I know she's very passionate about. As you rightly mentioned, I run a company called Regal Africa, and what we do at Regal Africa, basically we help our clients create wealth. And the way we say that you can be able to create wealth is through trade and investment. And so as an international trade expert and investment expert, my focus is really helping our clients, people who are interested in the Africa space, whether you're African, African in the diaspora, or what I call friends of Africa. So if you're interested in being part of Africa economic development, that is the work that we do at Regal Africa. We work with businesses, we work with individuals, we work with institutions and government. And the core right here is, like I said, trade and investments. We do have a Center of International Trade where we help people really take advantage of the opportunities that global trade presents. We also work with family businesses, which are majority of businesses in Africa, to make sure that they're able to create wealth through investments in the right thing. And so they are able to then make sure there's wealth created for the next generation. And we're all about business leadership. And I'll talk more about that, but our focus really is on trade and investment. And I'm very happy to be here today to discuss more about the trends that I see about global trade. Thank you.
Thank you, and looking forward to dialoguing with you today. Welcome, Joy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so delighted to be among these two ladies on my left and my right on my screen here. They are really the ladies who I envy their work they're doing. And you're doing amazing work in Kenya and globally in general. And I'm learning a lot from you, Kezi. We are working together, looking for ways we can move this agenda forward. And probably the others are thinking now, what is Joy Wanjiru doing now with women in trade and African women in Europe to do with trade? You're right, because our work is to make sure that both sides are talking to each other. We are the bridge of I call it the diaspora bridge. We are the people who are bringing these communications and issues that are coming in between. And just to talk about who I am, as I've been asked, I'm the founder of African Women in Europe, and an organization that I've been there for 15 years. And our wish was always to empower ourselves first before you empower others. And we always say, fill your cup first before others. So we managed to do it within 15 years. You can imagine it was a hard work. It's not that easy here in Europe. But we say, now we are good, we are all set, we know our goals. How can we go back and support our people back at home? We're very passionate about entrepreneur. And that's where we said, you know what, we're gonna take this new vehicle that is looking so perfect, and actually the one we were waiting for because we were researching a lot. And through Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we launched the African Women in Trade. What does that mean? That means we are the bridge, accelerators, you want to call us accelerator, you wanted to call it enablers, to make sure that our women who are now on the ground and actually going out there and finding where are these women. So we're using the same model of African Women in Europe, where we found other women. And that's the same thing. We are using the concept with African Women Trade. We call it our baby. And from there, we have 4,000 women that we are working with very closely, finding out what is their need, what is their want. I don't want to bring my diaspora concept there, just finding out what is the needs and want of the trading. And once I realize what they want, I come to Anne and I call Liz, now, this is what they need. And I think you have what they need. How can you put them together? And that's my work right now, finding out what the women really want, and from there, finding the solution and bringing the solutions to them. So we communicate in different levels, high levels, meaning high businesses or industrial level. We have micro and macro levels. And we're also working with the governments here in Germany and as well in Africa Continental Free Trade Area to make sure the policies are suiting the women on the ground. But my area of working is really on the ground with the women. So thank you so much. And yes, we do have different chapters. We have Kenya chapter, we have Nigerian and Ghana, and we have Rwanda as well. And so we are building up the platform to make sure the women are able to consider. But we'll talk more on that as we continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. Indeed, both you and Joy are, it's always such a delight to interact with the both of you. And I've been hosting these trade talks the last 4 weeks, But I think today's conversation ties everything so neatly together. And it's such a joy to have the two of you, because I know the work that you're doing on the ground and the interactions that you're having with entrepreneurs, with even investors, with SMEs, businesses at different levels, different stakeholders in trade. And therefore, I'm really, really excited for us to have this conversation. Those that are joining us, thank you that I'm seeing the introductions starting to happen in the chat. You never know where you make your connections, and I always welcome everybody to introduce themselves. Let us know what you're doing and engage with this conversation. Now, Anne and Joy, to get our conversation started, I just not too long ago bumped on a report, just a couple of days ago. It's the Global Trade Outlook for 2021. A report that has been released by UNCTAD this month, in the month of May. And I will just read out for our benefit and even for the benefit of those that are joining us, just a few pointers from that report that can form a basic context of our conversation today. World trade is expected, or actually, this report analyzed trade trends in Q1 of 2021. And what it reported is that the world trade generally has rebounded to a record high in Q1 2021. And this is largely been driven by exports from Southeast Asia. So these are countries that had an earlier response to the pandemic and that were able to mitigate somehow the pandemic earlier than different other regions, and they are the ones now that are driving trade levels. But trade in developing regions, such as ours, is definitely expected to recover much more slower. Another finding, trade in goods definitely surpasses pre-pandemic levels, particularly trade in COVID-related sectors. Of course, we would expect that. So trade in COVID-related sectors remains strong, whereas trade in services continues to lag behind. That has implications for our conversation, because Joy, for you, we know that largely women tend to find themselves, the services sector being largely driven by women. Another finding is that there is an expectation that in 2021, global trade will grow by 16%, even though the outlook remains uncertain in many regions. Now, my question is, when we look at these findings, and there's a lot more in that report that I'm able to even share with those attending today. But a key pointer, global trade, the uneven nature of global trade, it's not new. But the general uneven nature, and even when we talk about economic recovery right now, it is projected already, Vitukwa ground. Joy, you deal with what is on the ground. It is uneven. What do we think? And maybe, and you would tell me your own, what you're seeing as trends, even as you answer this question, you tell me what you're seeing as general trends in trade around the world. But what do you think developing economies ought to do to spark some form of recovery when it comes to trade? Because there's already quite a gap. There's always been a gap, but it has only widened with the pandemic. What do you think a developing economy ought to do to spur a quicker recovery? And we could start with you and we'll go to Joe. And you could talk about what are the trends you're noticing right now.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing that about UNCTAD and what they said, because I agree with a lot of what they're saying. But you mentioned about the unevenness of global trade, and Africa has always been left behind. And the question really is about what should be done. And I think a lot of this has to deal with information. information is key to make sure that more people are participating in trade, and specifically regional, continental, and global trade. And I think this has to, the part has to be played by government, right? Because they're the ones who put in these trade policies. There's even a part for business membership organizations who have members who are able to then understand this information. And then there are companies like myself who are consultants and advisors who work with businesses and connect all these people to make sure there's an enabling environment. But for me, what I have been saying over and over again is the fact that I believe the future is bright for all Africans, right? This is the time that Africans are waking up and saying, you know what? We are part of the global village. We have a great opportunity with the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement where we can now do more intra-Africa trade. And as we trade more with Africa, then we build capacity then to trade with the rest of the world. And a lot of this unevenness has been, how do we access the global market? And for me, I have been saying a lot of Africans have not realized how strategic Africa is. When we talk about geopolitics or geography, right? Africa is stuck in the middle. We have access to the Americas, we have access to Europe, we have access to Asia, and we are really stuck in the middle. So when you're talking about trade, we as Africans have to understand how strategic we are geographically, right? So anyone who is in Europe, we have clients in Europe who always want to have access to the Far East. They have to come to East Coast of Africa, right? Whether it's through the Mombasa port, or now we have a new Lamu port, or Dar es Salaam, or Mozambique and stuff like that. A lot of us in Africa have not understood that, and we need to be able to understand that so that we can take advantage of these opportunities. The other thing that we continuously need to let people be aware of is that because Africa's population is growing, especially the youth, this is great for everybody in trade, right? Because one, people are able to work, then they have disposable income, so there's more trade that's going to happen. The other thing is that we have a young population who can be able to work at affordable rates. So anyone who is in trade or is in the value chain of trade can take advantage of this. And back to what I was saying with government, in order for trade to happen more in Africa, government needs to speak, but also I would say also a lot of the Africans need to change their mindset. We need to have transformation to believe that we can do, especially the women in Africa. And I know Joy will talk more about that. I've been in the space of women in Africa, and I really champion women in business. But I have really decided at Regal Africa that it's more than just the woman. It's more than women and youth, even though they are the core of the constituency that we're speaking to. But all Africans need to realize about the opportunities. They need to listen. They need to get the information. They need to build capacity so that they can take advantage of that. So there's a part that the government plays. There's a part that associations and membership organizations play. And then there's a part that we in the private sector ensure that all this is tied together so that we are all taking advantage of the opportunities in the global space. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Joy, please weigh in on that.
Yes, as Anne says there, coming from the outside side here where I am right now, and I can tell you what you just said there is correct. We are having, if you see, I don't know, some of these Facebook pages, they attract different marketing sponsors. So I get different than what you get down there. So what I've been seeing on my platform, because they have been saying, they choose what I do. They say I do a lot of trading, I do a lot of these. And I've seen, as you said, the Asia, the markets that have been doing very well globally, they are starting to sell the products we have. So I had actually one time on a platform and I said, what, you people are selling avocados and you are the best avocado? No, the best avocados, they're in Kenya and in Africa. I'm like putting on the post in the WhatsApp, in the Facebook, and they are telling me, no, they don't. I said, no, yours are growing in the greenhouse. We have fresh. There's now the other market have known what Europe wants. They've identified the product they want, and now they're growing them. and Africa is still organizing itself, trying to put things in order, and the market access is they're not taking advantage of the market access. And definitely here in Europe, they don't want those products from greenhouse. I can tell you, the products that we are seeing here on the market, we are actually, I never used to go look where they come from, but nowadays, whenever I go to shop, I have to look exactly where are they coming from. So they do have a lot of from Cuba, you know, very far away. You wonder, Africa is closer. Why don't they have these products here? And it's very rare. You see only flowers from Kenya. You see different products, but we should need to access this African market access. So me, I'm coming back to the diasporans who are here like me and the rest. We should be going out there, finding a way of putting those products in the market, because nobody's going to do it apart from them. And you'll realize all those products that are coming from different countries, they are the ones who come here and market for them. And we have to say the government still has to do a lot of work, but they can do so much. And these are private sectors. So these private sectors, anybody diaspora can pick up, and it's an opportunity, and they should go for it. Definitely, it's something that we have the opportunity, and that's why you see as African women in Europe, we are actually taking one product, because I really try to talk about practical thing, what we are doing. We have taken like coffee. There's a member of of African Women in Trade. We found out that she has a product which is ready for the Africa. She has all the certificates ready, and I can tell you the certificates, there are so many, like 65, I don't know how many, and cost a lot of money. She's organized herself, and her problem is just to have the market access. Of course, here in Europe, they're taking raw material, and that's not what we are focusing on here. We want a finished product. So we are working with that person to actually build a supply chain. So like yesterday night, we were busy trying to figure out, okay, we have a distributor, which is a Kenyan and a Kenyan product. And the beauty about this product, coffee, is made by women in Kenya, packaged in Kenya, and it has our logo. We also have African Women Trade, and we'll come here and sell it with a social impact, because people, this is what they want to do. They just don't want to buy anything on the product anymore. They want to see where it's coming from, and they have a potential. And very soon we'll be working with African women here in Europe, in different countries, as I said, Europe. Can you imagine? So if that product is able to do, we can be able to build those channels that we bring other products that are needed, first of all, because Europe don't take any product. And then we have to train, a lot of training is needed to make sure that the product meets the markets. As I can tell you, the product was in English, we had to translate it ourselves in German, you know, so that the product can come to the access. If it go to Italy, you need to get somebody from our network to translate that in Italy, you know. So it's quite nice, and to see how that's working. So it's a case study. I'm using it also on my platform, so that whenever I go anywhere, I'm talking of something that I'm very practical. And you said very important that the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, I'm so happy for it, because it's actually gonna be creating, because something that I don't understand is that here I live very close. I can give you my concept where I live in Germany, but Switzerland is very close to me, and Swiss is on the other side. It's like 30 minutes. I'm in both countries. So you can imagine the trading that is happening between them. Very easy. I can just cross and buy the product. This one, if you want oil, you go get it from there. It's cheaper if you want these products, you know. How is it come that in our own continent, we are not able to sell a product to just a neighboring country and do it a proper transaction that first of all, we need to clean up our box in the continent before we start even thinking coming to Europe, you know, because once we organize ourselves that way, the people here, it's so easy when countries start talking to each other. And I'm so happy the Africa Continental Free Trade. Of course, we do have the clusters that have already been formed, like the ECOSOC, and I'm still understanding all of them, East African Community, and all these packages that have been prepared, countries that are working together, but we can do much more. But I'm so looking forward to the Africa Continental Free Trade, and I'm campaigning for it over and over, because I think we need to start more, and that's where the business is not here. There is where the business is all this time. And there's a lot of challenges, and I think you're going to talk about that also shortly. Thank you.
Absolutely. Joy, you raise a very important trend that has hit the global trade space in the recent years, where you have clients or customers, consumers don't just want to buy a product. they now buy into the story behind the product. And that's a really important trend in global trade, that manufacturers, traders, exporters now need to be able to export not just the product, but to be able to tell the story behind the product. And we've seen a lot more push around sustainable trade. One of the areas that we consult on at Ignited Africa is on sustainable trade, because you have more buyers wanting to know in what environment was that product produced, in what is the working conditions of the workers that are growing those avocados or those horticultural products. Not too long ago, we had a scenario with one of the companies here in Kenya, one of the producers of horticultural, is it fruit? Yeah, fruit, here in Kenya, that has traditionally exported widely to Europe, been involved in a scandal around treatment of employees. And that would lead to rejection of their produce. So what you're raising, Joy, is a really important concept that even Africans do need to know, own the story behind the product, and be able to articulate that story. There's also, and we've seen this emergence, particularly in the tourism industry, that travelers will now want to visit a destination because of the story behind that destination. So it's a critical component of trade right now. And thank you for raising that, Joy. Indeed, also
Can I say something about the story?
Absolutely.
I really have to say that the stories we tell have to be positive stories, right? Because historically, the stories in Africa have always been very negative. I can give an example. In 2005, I was in the US, I started my business, and we were doing a clothing line, we were jewelry and home decor, and we were exporting them from Africa to the US. But at that time, the people only wanted to buy into the sad stories, right? As opposed to the fact that you're buying a good product that is actually being done by women, youth, and men in Africa, that is creating impact in the society, that is good product, that is affordable. So what I'm saying, even as we tell these stories, can we make sure that they are positive stories, so that then we are not tainting the image of Africa about the sub-story and the sorry Africans? There are very many great stories, and people want, as Joy was rightfully putting, people want good quality products. So if you're producing organic, very nutritious product, they'll buy into that story and know that people actually took the time to make sure that things are done right. So those are the stories that I think need to be told, and not the sad story of Africa that has been perpetuated by the world. So when we go into global trade, let's change that narrative to more positive stories.
Absolutely. And there comes in the concept of even impact entrepreneurship, that knowing what is the impact, positive impact of your product on the environment, on the people, on the planet. What story does your product tell, and how articulate are you as an entrepreneur in telling that story? Because you're right, Anne, people want to buy into inspirational stories. I think long gone are the days where sob stories would sell, and you have people coming to Africa and taking funny photos and hoping to maximize their profit out of those funny photos. Africa has moved out of that space. We have got intellectual giants on this continent. We have innovators, we have creators of solutions. And the plan is, the thing is to be able to tell those stories from a place of impact and from a place of growth. The AfCFTA, and I would want us to spend a little bit of time talking about that, because that has caused a shift in global trade. The formation of the world's largest trading bloc, that is a definite shift in the dynamics of global trade. But allow me to ask this question. COVID, of course, the pandemic has had its own implications on trade, and we are entering a recovery stage, but it is a recovery that is bogged down or tied down to, a lot of things have happened over the last 18 or so months. One of those things is government intervention, even in trade. Policies that may affect international trade, closure of borders, restriction of trade activities. And I want to ask, from a trade and investment perspective, when we start seeing such firm control of government on trade, and of course government has first responsibility to its citizenry, but when we start seeing such firm control policies or directives or interventions that have an implication on trade, and the other thing under is we've seen a lot of government borrowing, borrowing that was intended for recovery, pandemic recovery efforts. But that kind of borrowing, coupled with some even diplomatic conflict or tensions, somehow, when it is all said and done, when we emerge to the other side of COVID, when we get to the other end of the tunnel, what is a global trading environment likely to look like? Because, borrowing heavily, so which means a lot of pressure on debt, maybe a little bit of conflict here and there, and at the same time stifling trade or having which limit trade. What is a scenario likely to look like?
Okay.
Sorry, Anne,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yes. So those are loaded questions, right? Because it all ties down to, like you said, government interventions. And we have seen the closure of borders, especially at the very beginning, because people were scared. And of course, the first priorities is really protecting your citizens. But again, I think it also opened up something very interesting. The focus now became more on regional supply chains, right? Regional we did see, like, for example, Kenya and TZ border, there were issues and everything. But by and large, it was easier to do business regionally than globally, right? So people started really looking and saying, do I really need to import my inputs from China, or I can actually get them from South Africa, right? And things of that nature. So I think going forward, and especially because the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is, I think, one of the best things that, if implemented well, will transform Africa and transform the world. The actual countries, the states, need to be very proactive to make sure that they are improving the conducive business environment so they are not stifling people who want to trade, right? So we need to have a lot of these governments coming in and saying, we are going to make sure that if there are any issues, we're going to resolve it in an amicable way, in a fast way, so that trade can continue to happen. And you will continue seeing that, for example, in the East Africa community, which Kenya is part of, right? So if the East African, for example, Business Council really part talking and saying and championing for the business community and saying, we want to make sure that trade does not stop. So what I see in the future happening is more regional engagement, which then helps us be able to supply the global world. And then it ties back now to government debt. Yes, we actually got a lot of debt, and a lot of our developing countries don't have the capability to pay back this debt, which I think is very unfortunate. Why? Because a lot of African countries are in the formal economy. So it's very hard for then our countries to actually collect taxes, all right? And then the few formal businesses are then overtaxed. So we have an issue with tax and collection of taxes. So going forward, we need to find a way. Personally, I champion more of the formalization of African economies, because if all of us are more formal and it's easier for us to then collect taxes, which is should be a good rate, right? And then we can be able to get the right money that then we don't have to go internationally to borrow. At the same time, we need to then make sure we have the right leaders in government and the right people who are then using these funds in the right way. Because as you rightfully put, there's a lot of debt that was collected, but was it used in the right way, right? Was it used in the right way? Will it, after COVID, because now we're in the post-COVID, will it have left the business community being able to actually do more business, create more jobs, provide an environment so that all of us are thriving? And I think that is the continuous challenge that we in the business community have to champion and make sure that we, hold the government in check and make sure that things are done right. But when it comes to, again, back to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, I think the implementer is the private sector. The private sector, the governments have done their part, right? Or the African Union has done its part. It's the private sector to do business with and without this incentive. I mean, I think it is great because now we are actually seeing Africans saying, can we do business with each other? And in fact, what Joy was talking about, Africans supporting each other. Africans in the diaspora, Africans in here, can we support each other? Because if we do trade together, then everybody wins. And it starts with the business community, but then again, we need to hold government accountable to make sure that they are implementing some of these things, not implementing, but they're making sure that since not all African countries have ratified the AFCFTA, making sure that they are talking to their neighbors to make sure that happens, and then making sure that even the custom officers and trade facilitation, everything that has to do with trade is done well so that the business people can do what they're called to do, which is business. Provide goods and services, create jobs, and create wealth for themselves. That's what I have to say.
I want to ask Joy something riding on what you're saying, and formalization of African economies. The three of us are put together in a room, we are likely to spend a lot of time talking about our pet topics, trade and gender and the AFCFTA. Joy, formalization of African economies. We've always said, African economies, yes, are SME driven, but trade in Africa is women driven. But when we talk about SMEs and we talk about women, we have to recognize the aspect of informal trade. So Joy, formalization of African economies, it's a critical factor towards driving trade. But how do we get there, Joy? Even when we look at CBITs, the cross-border trade, the cross-border informal traders, these guys have been moving volumes for decades. They've been trading long before even the work towards the AFCFTA began. But many of these are informal traders with a lot of limitation, even on access to capital. It's difficult to integrate them in global value chains because of how they are structured. How do we get there, Joy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's you're touching exactly where my women are. They're all in the informal sectors, and thinking about here, because I like to compare, although it's not the same thing when you compare things, but maybe there's something we could learn from what goes on here, because here in Germany, for example, it's very hard to do an informal business. So what the government do, they have given us a very good model that is called a small business thing. Yeah? You don't pay taxes, but they just want to know what you're doing and get you going. They know you need time to grow, and but you need to show them every year what you did, what you have been doing, whether you have been going minuses. They don't really care. They just want to see what you've been doing. And actually it helps me to get formalized, right? And I get used to preparing these papers. And this can go on for years. I have people in small businesses for over 20 years. But it is formally because they know you exist. You don't pay a lot of money to register. It's like around 10 euro or something like that. And then they know you're existing. So because these are black, we call it black money, that is not allowed in the country to work businesses without registration. So coming back to the Kenya concept or the Africa concept, something like that could be done. But this doesn't come from just the people on the ground. The people on the ground, they will do what they do best because they need to feed their children, and only through businesses, I don't think they're gonna wait for the government to organize themselves. So as soon as they organize themselves and say, okay, fine, every businesses should have at least, and not putting like they need money from them first, because they need to grow. Any business need to grow, and they can monitor them and help them. There's a lot of also training to put this formalization, maybe even not governmental area, in terms of also looking for support now that not so many businesses are not formalized, is and I have to go back to the M-Pesa, because M-Pesa is something that has helped a lot of business to get formalized. I can tell you, here in diaspora, some of us operate business down on the ground, and we know how much money is going in, going out. So we are able to put these things on paper and have it organized, and have a bank account where you put the money in and show the movement of money and what it's being used for. Because this is what we've realized when you're looking for support, they ask you to show their business, how was their business doing for the last 3 years. It's just most of the time they don't want to see how much money you're making, which is also about the mindset thing. They just want to see how you're doing your business. How are you organized? Are you putting things in order? And I can tell you there's a lot of, all the biggest from Starbucks, they all run zero in their accounts, in terms of their balance sheet. And because they know how to manage it the way they do it. And a lot of training again. I go back to training and informing women, especially my women. I try to inform them. You just don't need so much. You can go buy a receipt book. Like I can tell you one of the programs that is going on right now that we have, where the diaspora are working with the business on the ground. This is Kenya, Cameroon, Ghana, and Togo, and Ethiopia. So they're training them. They're really new businesses and small business. So they have their people on the ground in the country who are bringing them, helping them to prepare this thing to be formalized. So they tell them, when you buy food, whatever you buy, the product you want to show as you've bought, it has to have a receipt. It has to have a name, it has to have a date, it has to have a stamp and things like that. And you need to buy a book, like a book like this, and write us everything you're doing all the time. How much you spend here, where you spend that, and they monitor it like 6 months, right? And that's already going towards formalization, but not really like the governmental level, because that part they need to do it from their side, because that's the only way to have it. But individually, you can do that. It's just about putting your papers and your accounts in order, just to show, and using a bank behind it, and I'm hoping that M-Pesa can go into that level, that they can also show, I'm not so sure, I'm not using so much, I use it just to send money here and there. They can show you account where you put this, where you put that. I'm not so sure whether it's there or not, but that's already a good place to get started, especially in the small businesses. So that's my take for that. And then back to the question that you said about Corona, because that's something else I wanted to mention, how trade will look like after Corona. And now I can tell you, the Corona will have been an advantage for Africa, especially the Africa Container Free Trade. I would not have heard about it if it was not like everything went digital. So there were so many meetings open up, those meetings that happened in closed doors, only the special people. Now they were all opener, and we were able to access this meeting. What I'm showing here is what I hear from these meetings before the launch and all the way to the beginning. So we have put Africa in a very good space in the internet world and globally. So people are aware of what is Africa Container Free Trade. Those people who are access and they know the bigger market outside Africa, they have very good access to the internet. So they're aware of this now. So we have positioned ourselves very good as a continent. Now it's time to put an action plan. So they will be coming. They're looking at us, okay, these are for country, okay, what does it mean? Okay, then we can buy this stuff. Okay, we used to buy from there. Oh, this time we can buy from actually where because it's not just coming with the product, they're also coming with a story behind it, bringing in why we are doing we have the Africa continent on the ground. So after the COVID, so it's up to us. These things will reduce, especially for me, I'll be looking for all this information that was all over on my face every time. So I will be trying to run, following few people here and there, what's going on the ground. So there is a lot of change. I don't think there'll be more change. Even
Are we losing you, Joy?
Yeah.
Yeah, looks like we're losing.
you're all doing. Yeah, I'll get you back to, oh, sorry, yes, you're losing me.
Yeah, we got you back. We got you back. But let me ride on something you were saying, Joy. We've seen a shift in consumer behavior. Of course, with COVID, a lot of stuff was online, and there's been enhanced online trade, the growth, quickening the development of e-commerce as well. There's easier access to information. At the beginning, Anne talked about one of the challenges for African trade being absence of information. And maybe COVID has, in a way, facilitated access to information, but it has also shifted consumer spending habits. And we've seen a faster growth of certain industries, and then, of course, decline in certain other industries. An example is, of course, healthcare. We have more demand, enhanced consumer demand in healthcare products, digital products, communication equipment, home office equipment, of course, because of the nature of the pandemic. But similarly, we've seen a decline in services such as hospitality, of course, the tourism sector, transport as well, a decline in those sectors. Now, this is opportunity because we have more developing subsectors in the areas where there is consumer demand. But then we have shifts, industries, almost closures, massive closures in the hospitality, tourism and hospitality sector. And I'm wondering, Anne, the consumer has become conditioned now to a certain way of living, what happens, and I think you've seen even on retail space, in the property market, retail office space, you've seen in certain regions, even property prices taking quite a hit and quite a dip. Do we expect a bounce back in some of those sectors, some of those subsectors? Do we even expect a bounce back anytime soon? Or have we already conditioned the consumer to prefer certain, to shift their consumer habits?
So Kezia, I would say that definitely COVID and this new environment has conditioned us to start using technology, in a certain way. And so now we will not go back to how things were. But one thing I do have to say about humans is that we like interaction, right? So some of these industries, like you're talking about tourism, people love to travel, see the world. People are, events have been affected, going to restaurants. Those are things that have definitely been affected because of COVID. So after COVID, will they go back to the way they were? They will, but they'll go back differently. Let me just give you a practical example. Right now, if I'm to go to Java or any restaurant in Kenya, and I want to be able to order something, no more I will not be getting a menu like I used to, right? A paper menu. What I'm doing right now is I'm using a QR code and being able to now find the menu that way. So now technology has overtaken, meaning by the time even after COVID, it will be normal. Everything that you do will be through the digital aspect. If it's about purchasing things, from the comfort of my home, I can be able to buy anything. For example, my family business were in events and flowers. No more do you have to go somewhere to buy flowers. What we do is we deliver those flowers directly to your home or office. Those things have changed. If it's different industries like healthcare, no more do you have to go to the pharmacy to be able to get your medicine. You just call or you go to an app and they deliver it. So what we're going to see after COVID is, I think you're going to see a blend. You're going to see a blend. You're going to see people wanting some industries are going to be more technology focused in regards to delivery, in regards to being able to get people to access products better. But then you'll still see a bounce back of the traditional way of doing things in places whereby now human interaction is very, very, very important. So in fact, when I was thinking about these global trends and the sectors that I see really being affected is things like healthcare, right? You don't really need to go to the hospital. There's telemedicine. So those are things you start seeing differently. In the case of education, you don't have to go to class. Online education is going to be happening, edutech. In the case of professional services, in fact, one of the things Joy was mentioning, and I was a bit cringing, was the fact that in Africa, we're still writing our revenues and expenses on paper. We're in a digital economy. Joy, I'd like you to tell your women, remove that paper thing. There are online accounting softwares which are free, which are very affordable. And those are things that we do at Regal Africa. On my phone, anytime I meet a client and they want to do something on my phone, I give them a quotation and invoice at a click on my phone. Like, why are we still on paper? So we'll start seeing things like professional services. I am in Kenya and I can offer my accounting service to someone in Germany. I can offer my advisory service to someone in Germany. Any kind of service will start seeing. So you'll start seeing a lot of these things happening. The retail space will transform. I'm in my house, I don't want to leave, I have company, I just order. So things I think are going to change for the better. And I believe some of those economies, certain industries like the tourism and hospitality, they will come back, but they'll come back different with technology embedded in how they actually offer their services. So, yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you very much. This tends to be the fastest hour of my Thursday. And, I'm just looking at the clock and seeing it's already flipping away. It tends to be the quickest hour that really fast dwindles away. Thank you. I see we have Ike, who introduced himself in the chat box. Nice to have you here, Ike, joining us from Marcus Flynn in Nigeria. And we also have John Gacha, who is the director of Irrifam Irrigation Systems in Kenya, and they're doing agribusiness. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for everybody else who's joining us. Please do feel free if you would like us to address a particular issue. I know we are very thin on time, but it's always so good to hear from our audience, to get to know what are your thoughts and what you would want us to address. I want to come back to you, Joy, and then to Anne, and for us to quickly talk about opportunities that have emerged. We may have talked about challenges. We've covered changes in our conversation here in not a very neat manner, but we've covered those. I want us to explore opportunities. Imagine opportunities. And I know the AFCFTA is a huge one, and you can unpackage it, but very quickly, in maybe just 60 seconds each. What are the opportunities? What can we grab? Because even in this pandemic, and even in the changes, in the challenges that global trade finds itself in, there are emerging opportunities. There are opportunities for trade differently. Maybe digital enabled services is arising that as an opportunity. But what are the opportunities from where you sit, Joy? What are the clear opportunities you see for not just women, but entrepreneurs around the world?
Thank you so much for that. I hope my internet will not look like it's very weak right now, whatever the reason.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's flipping, Joy. Your connection is flipping on you.
Yes, I can see that. So what I'll do, I'll join it differently. And you can go ahead and I'll join after.
Okay, I can go ahead, Kezi, that's okay. So you asked for 3 opportunities or all opportunities that I see? Okay, maybe I'll start with 3 just because of time. Definitely digital trade. Digital trade, anyone who's in business, you need to be in digital trade. And it has been made very easy for anyone in Africa to be able to take advantage of that. I give you an example. There's a company called Mzizi. So if you want to trade online, they give you an e-commerce platform, you do your digital payments on the same platform, and they're connected to logistics so that you can be able to actually transport your goods anywhere in the world. We're doing that at Eva's Events and Flowers, where we actually are able to deliver flowers to anyone's home or office, right? And it's through Mzizi. right? So digital trade is going to open that locally, regionally, and globally. So definitely everyone needs to look at that about digital trade and how that links to payments and how that links to logistics. The other opportunity that I am seeing that is really great with global trade is the change of narrative. We are going to start seeing the rise of African brands, positive African brands. When you look at the top 100 brands in the world, rarely do you see anything African. But then now, because of the internet and the exposure of the world to what's going on and AFCFTA, you're going to start seeing the rise of African brands. So the opportunity here is anyone who is in either a niche market or mass market, create a great brand, a story behind what you have to offer so that people gravitate towards buying your goods or service because they're aware of it. So we're going to start seeing that no more trading goods just because it's there. You know, we always have this Maasai, you know, like the neck piece I'm wearing, right? I love African jewelry, but it's not branded. So we need to get to that point where we are moving from just generic products to branded products so that people know that it's brand Kenya or brand Africa or that particular brand that you're actually offering. And then the other opportunity I'm definitely seeing is the reorganization of supply chains and value chains. We're going to see that being regionally. So that collectively, if I'm in East Africa and I'm creating a coffee brand, I have coffee from Kenya, from Ethiopia, from Rwanda, from Uganda in my brand, and then I can export it to the world, right? So it stops being just only one country or one type, but you're actually creating an African coffee brand and you can link it to global markets. So I think that's what I think a lot of people need to look at and stop playing small, all right? Stop playing small, think huge, and looking at technology, looking at the world, and definitely building African brands. Yeah.
You know, I really wish we had time, and I would really want to unpackage the whole opportunity around reorganizing value chains within trade, particularly for the African market. And who knows, perhaps we'll have a different trade talks just focusing on the value chains and how particularly small businesses can think differently around doing business in international trade. Joy, quickly, what are the opportunities that you see in just 60 seconds?
Yes, you can hear me now, right?
Absolutely.
Great. So the opportunities that are out there, I'll just make it as you had Anne said, a lot of opportunities are there. But what I know, opportunities are there, but you cannot go on your own. You need to work with others. You need to form this, as she said, the supply chain. You cannot do everything in the whole product. You need to work with a team working on one side. And I give an example of the coffee. We have the producers, we have the distributors, you have the packaging people, and that you have to work with others to be able to get into all these opportunities. Alone, it's challenging. And I've seen so many companies that have started with that. They have whole supply chain. It's and when one area is affected, then the whole supply chain they cannot sell the product and they have closed the business. So we need to work together. That's a very important one. And I think Anne mentioned all of them. And for me, I'm always working with others, partnering and forming really good business partnership to bring so many products and services forward. Thank you, and for having me as well on the stage.
Thank you. You know, Joy, that's a really important one. Collaborations. We've moved from, the era of competition around small brands, and we've moved to what we call cooperation. You can collaborate with those that you would originally compete with, and that is a tactic that is working pretty well, particularly for small holder or small scale traders, building brands that are more competitive on the continent. And if you could just shoot quickly a final thought, and I heard you say something that was very strong: stop playing small, stop playing small. If you could just quickly shoot a final thought, even as we draw near the close of today's Trade Talk.
All right, my final thoughts are: it's a great time to be in business in Africa. The opportunities are endless. I repeat what has been said, collaboration is key, but you need to build trust. You need to build trust, which is very critical. So do what you have to do. Provide the good products, provide the good service, and then that is how you'll make sure there's continuation of trade. And what you need to focus on is partnerships in these foreign countries, because local knowledge is very important. Make sure that if you decide to go the way of distribution, it's a great way to do that, because local connections in that market are also very important. But I think everyone needs to think about digital trade, because we have a global outreach. And I say digital trade is the great equalizer of our time. You can reach any part of the world through technology. So that's my last word.
Absolutely. Yes, we have a near equal playing field. Digital trade is enabling companies that would not have been able to play on the international trade scene. Joy, inspirational words as we draw nearing the close of this conversation.
Yes, I just want to encourage everyone out there, whatever you're doing, you do it the best of what you can, and find somebody else who you can work with. And as you heard, trust is a very important thing to build this connectivity, to make sure the collaboration works. So we need to build that. And I know we want to go digital. Most of it, I can tell you on my platform, they're all struggling with the digital world, because I've told you I'm working with really low levels, but they can do best at the same. And I want to also say something that Anne also mentioned a lot, and I like that. We are not asking the mama mboga, we call them in Kenya and other areas, to come and now go to the technical world. No, let them do the best what they do in their area, and they will be working together with the middlemen who will be helping them to put these products on package it, you name it. And everybody stays on their position and do the best what they can. And that's the way we will really manage, making sure that everyone is win in the whole chain. So yes, I encourage everyone, and thank you for having me. I've learned a lot as usual. I'm always ready to learn, and I'm looking forward to your trainings next time.
Thank you so much. Let me begin by thanking our two panelists today, women who I have worked with, women that are passionate about matters of trade on the continent of Africa, resource persons who have been helpful to a lot of businesses that are looking to upscale and do trade on the continent. So such a joy to have hosted you, Anne, today. And Joy, I am very grateful. Allow me also to thank every one of you who has joined us today and who joins us repeatedly every Thursday for these trade talks. Like I said, it's always such a short hour having conversations around issues that we are passionate about. Esther Mathi from Tanzania, we recognize your presence today. Esther deals in the export of organic products globally. Very good to have had you here, and everybody who is joining us. What a joy. We host these trade talks every Thursday, and we have done so through the month of May, and we'll be having a couple of other trade talks in the month of June. Next week on Thursday, we want to talk about a special segment in the African continent. 60% or more of our population on the continent is youth. And I think that number must be higher, should be higher. But we are the youngest continent in the world with a median age of below 19 years. And we want to talk about youth engagement for trade on the continent. What does that look like? How are we going to utilize our best resource to enhance trade, even as we think about the AFCFTA? So that will be our trade talk next week on Thursday, 1 o'clock East African time. And you can join us from anywhere around the world. And feel free to engage with us on our different pages. Feel free to interact with previous trade talks on our YouTube channel, which is Ignite Trade Africa. It's been such a joy to host you today. My name is Kezi Mukiri from Ignite Trade Africa. Anne Gaida has put out her contacts on the chat. Please feel free to engage. Joy has put out the contacts for African women in trade. Please feel free to engage, and let's form a community. The whole goal of the trade talks is to form a community of trade experts trade consultants, entrepreneurs, and SMEs, trade enthusiasts on the continent of Africa, even as we grow together around the AFCFTA. So thank you, everybody. I look forward to seeing you again on Thursday next week. Same time, same place. And God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.